This program introduces the notion of a digital value management system and how an organization can use digital value management to create, protect, and deliver digital business value. The DVMS Institute has a mission of creating affordable, pragmatic, and scalable approaches to digital value protection that fits organizations regardless of size, scale, or complexity. Our vision is to teach organizations how to build a digital value management system capable of building secure digital business outcomes expected by business leaders and government regulators. So let's introduce the parts of a digital value management system, or DVMS. It operates as what we call an overlay. So it begins with whatever your organization already does, and then provides overlay models that will help your organization identify gaps in their organizational capabilities, how those may impact their ability to successfully create, protect, and deliver on digital business value goals, and how they might then be able to adapt themselves effectively to do that. The first part of the digital value management system, or the first of the overlays, is what we call a ZX model. The ZX model allows us to look organizationally at whether the organization has a sufficiently mature set of minimum viable capabilities to allow for the successful integration of cybersecurity controls that we'll need in order to successfully create, protect, and deliver on our digital business objectives. It describes a series of practice areas, a set of practice broad control requirements, and describes some mappings between those practice areas and different cybersecurity controls and control families that you need in order to be able to successfully protect those digital capabilities. On top of the ZX model, the DVMS introduces what we call the CPD, or Create, Protect, and Deliver model. The Create, Protect, and Deliver model looks at your organization as a complex adaptive system and describes a series of 5 feedback loops that allow your organization to adapt itself to be able to make change, learn, and improve your capabilities so that you can successfully execute on your digital strategic goals and to be able to survive in the face of all of the chaos and changes that organizations face in the modern business situation. One of the things that you'll get from a CPD model is the identification of what types of controls we might need to implement to improve our existing capabilities to allow us to sufficiently create and protect value for our stakeholders, and should allow us to effectively either implement or integrate those controls to successfully protect those capabilities. Lastly, it takes the broad idea of the ZX model and it operationalizes it in how we measure our strategic goals, how we establish organizational intent, how and what kinds of adaptations we need to do, and how we measure, perform on, and innovate in a way to drive improvements. The next piece of the DVMS is called the 3D knowledge model, and it describes how information, work, and feedback flow through a system. How do we understand the nature of how knowledge enables our organization to perform and carry out various value streams, to be able to deliver on operational and strategic goals, and to ensure effective value sharing and knowledge sharing across different segments of your organization to help eliminate various siloed approaches and to facilitate effective collaboration that produces more effective results. Using the 3D knowledge model enables the DVMS fast track approach, which effectively describes a phased way to think about how we implement frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework, how we use models like the ZX model to assess organizational capabilities, identify gaps, and figure out how many and which controls we need, and at what level of rigor in order to meet our organization's objectives. So let's look at how the overlay model works. So it begins within the organization's overarching ability to govern itself. How do we establish strategic goals? How do we establish effective policies? How do we plan for how our governance then drives how we as a business organize ourselves to achieve those goals? This then gets coupled with assurance. How will we measure and verify that those strategic goals are effectively being met? Ultimately, from a digital business perspective, we then need to have the ability to plan our digital capabilities, to be able to design new or changed digital business services, to serve new customers, to offer new services to existing customers, to be able to streamline workflows and cut costs, and ultimately to be able to enable your organization to meet its digital evolution goals. From there, how do we facilitate organizational change so that we can introduce new capabilities, that we can manage the organization's people and practices and culture, and how we work together to embrace digital business approaches? Ultimately, it's critical that we're able to successfully execute on these goals. And so we want to be able to ensure that we can both execute and measure that we are successfully executing on these digital business objectives. And then lastly, we want to be able to trigger feedback loops that will enable different types of innovations that we may need. These may include relatively modest incremental or sustaining innovations, or very large adaptive or even disruptive innovations that may fundamentally even change the nature of the business that we're in. DVMS capabilities in the ZX model operate against what you already do. So if you look at your existing practices, your existing governance approaches, your existing management frameworks, and the like, you can use this as an overlay to identify and perform some kind of functioning gap analysis. What are your current levels of capability versus your needs? What are the nature of the different gaps that you face, and how do we then try to identify and improve ourselves against that? So, using the ZX model allows us to establish for each of those 7 capabilities a key set of practice areas, and then we can start thinking about when we want to implement a set of cybersecurity controls from some particular informative references in support of our NIST cybersecurity framework objectives. How exactly do we create the appropriate alignment and integration between those organizational capabilities and those controls? Right, as a simple example, how do I do effective incident response planning as part of my control family if I don't have effective alignment and integration with my organization's ability to do things like incident management? And so, based on these alignments, for each of the specific practice areas in question, we want to identify relevant controls and what types of controls and control integrations are required in order to ensure that those practices can be successfully executed, not only to create digital business value, but ultimately to be able to protect it as well. So the control requirements don't sit in a silo. They ultimately have to be aligned and integrated with your organization's existing practices and practice areas in order to make creating and protecting value the basic premise of how we ensure effective digital value delivery. So when we then consider things like use of the 3D knowledge model, a lot of this is driven by how information flows through your organization. Right. So I want to be able to understand in the x axis of this 3D knowledge model, for example, how information flows through a value stream. What work happens prior to me? What work happens after me? What are we trying to deliver as part of this overall value stream? How does that ultimately contribute to us meeting our organizational capability goals, providing assurance against various policies? My ability to perform is impacted by information from other teams. So Y plus here, for example, suggests that there's and information I need from other workflows and other teams to carry out my work successfully. What information is that and how does that work? Likewise, the work that I do then generates information that will probably be needed by other teams to perform their own work. So that begs questions again. How well do they get visibility into the information I should be providing them in order to help them get the results that they need? When we start looking at how organizations manage the flow of knowledge, manage their communications among their stakeholders, manage the flow of feedback to identify improvements and innovations, we start to see how the complex interactions in our systems produce the results they produce today and provide us vehicles to improve those capabilities for tomorrow. Lastly, one of the things that this really helps us to do is to get beyond having siloed information and siloed behavior within our organization by acknowledging the interdependent nature of these workflows and these information flows to be able to meet organizational goals. The CPD model then serves as an abstraction looking beyond what happens at the ZX level. So, how do we run an organization in the 21st century? And the answer is that we have to deal with some harsh realities on the ground. The first, of course, is how do we as organizations make strategies and policies that incorporate a functioning understanding of enterprise risk so that our strategy risk construct optimized in the approaches and the processes that we use. And that should be reflected in the organization's policies and general strategic direction. From there, the organization has to actually establish metrics. How will we measure our strategic goals? What do we need to do to adapt our existing capabilities to achieve those goals? What kinds of operational metrics do we need in order to be able to successfully measure performance and delivery of those objectives? And then as we go and actually create and deliver digital business capabilities, we want to ensure that we are protecting those at the same time and that we are successfully delivering on those goals. Lastly, of course, we need to be able to assess these capabilities, to provide feedback to our governance level, to be able to provide opportunities for innovation and improvement, either within our existing executional approach or perhaps more broadly in being able to adapt our strategies and policies to be able to take advantage of new capabilities. In a complex digital business world, feedback must come quickly in order for your organization to be able to learn and adapt, to be able to successfully compete in a very dynamic, changing environment. So ultimately, the CPD model allows us to create, using fairly straightforward feedback loops, to create the vehicles that will enable us to successfully create, protect, and deliver value, generate opportunities for innovation and feedback, and be able to continually adapt to the different opportunities and potential risks that we may face as we work forward in this new digital business universe. So, how do you get there? Right, the fast track approach, again, is broadly a roadmap that allows you to take the strategic adoption decision of using something like the NIST cybersecurity framework as a way to manage your organization's overall enterprise risk and drive it into certain adaptations that your organization may wish to take in order to be able to apply the sufficient level of capability to be able to successfully integrate these controls into your organization's capabilities and to be able to execute and innovate and sustain these capabilities over the long run. So you'll notice on the diagram that this is broadly a phased approach. In phase 0, perhaps we're dealing with immediate term issues around our organization's abilities to respond to potential cyber incidents, to be able to improve the quality of our awareness and training programs, to be able to perform functional risk assessments and the like. As we work into phase 1, we start looking at building an effective beachhead. How do we understand the hardware and software assets that we have? How do we apply appropriate access controls against them? How do we monitor those components? How do we effectively audit and verify that they are actually delivering on their intended objectives? How do we ensure the integrity of our components and systems? And again, you'll notice that you find yourself coming back over and over and over again to the same types of control families as you add additional controls as you work your way through the phases. And so when it continues through phase 2 and phase 3, as your organization continues to add controls, continues to innovate on existing controls, and ultimately, all of this operates in an adaptive way because literally everything in your cyber risk equation is a moving target, right? The nature of the assets you're trying to protect, the nature of the vulnerabilities you may have, the potential that threat actors may bring to bear, and the potential control options you might have, and how those taken together help you identify and manage your risk.